All right. Well, as the last speaker, there's been a lot of time travel already this evening, and I'm going to take you on another one. So let's turn the dial in our time machine, not so far back, fall 2021. So you remember, we all had masks in our pockets. My now preteen was listening to Disney's Encanto on a loop. And we just got rid of Donald Trump for good, right? And back here at home in the Canadian fall federal election, the number one issue was climate change. Before healthcare, before the amount of taxes people paid, climate change. Now, 4 years later, before getting here this evening and listening to all my brilliant colleagues, you could be forgiven by listening to the news for thinking that maybe the electrification economy was dead. Consumer carbon pricing's in the news, it's over. Donald Trump is lighting every regulation that might lower pollution on fire that he can find. But yet, over the next 2 years, 95% of the electricity growth demand globally is going to be met by renewables. Here at home across Canada right now, in each and every single province, either we have a procurement ongoing for renewable energy or renewable projects being built. So how's this happening? How's the electrification economy booming in the face of climate change? And I think my speakers have given away the punchline here. It's because in almost every jurisdiction globally, renewable energy is becoming the cheapest new source of demand and generation production. And because cost curves have come down almost 90%, the UK Climate Change Committee had to review the cost to hit net zero. So they were looking back at what they figured out in 2020. They're revising it now in 2025. They found that the cost to hit net zero had come down by 75%. So I think, when you look back again in 2021 at what Bloomberg was saying was going to happen with solar PV and batteries, it was increasing over time. But every year they had to revise their projections up and up and up until this year it's looking more globally like an S curve. And, as technologies are changing and for these reasons that they are changing in cost and their ability to provide energy security, people's attitudes are changing. So we recently polled people in the Greater Toronto Hamilton area, Metro Vancouver, but their attitudes about clean technologies like heat pumps and EVs, and grouped them kind of by demographic. So retired homeowners actually happen to be twice as interested in lowering their carbon footprint as a group of suburban, working, middle-class parents. But the two groups were equally interested in adopting heat pumps and EVs. So maybe this is an electro-tech revolution, not fueled so much by climate change, but by these other factors. Now, before you leave here today saying, well, the Walrus talks lady said climate change is solved, the electro-tech revolution is going to solve it, clearly we still have a few problems. And I think, misinformation, the increasing polarization of our politics, these are real challenges that are absolutely going to influence how we see this particular revolution unfurl. But I'd suggest here in Canada, we have 4 horsemen that are slayable, that we can address and that really will impact our ability to benefit from this moment of change. So the first one is our integration with our neighbors south of the border of the United States. So, we're the 9th biggest economy in the world, but we've been living next to number 1. And for reasons of market integration and others, it's been easy to adopt by reference the Energy Star rating for your refrigerator, the safety and fuel emission standards for your vehicle. All of these things have been coming from the US. And as they are setting off in their own path, it was already very unappealing to be stuck on an island with Donald Trump. But while the rest of the world is starting to drive vehicles that you can fuel up at 40 cents a liter and that charge in 20 minutes, it's going to look less appealing. So it's our moment to figure out, can we take back and find a Canadian approach to some of these pieces? And that is tied to number 2, which is, I think in both cases, it's hard to look beyond a fossil fuel powered economy. And don't get me wrong, fossil fuels are going to constitute a large source of our exports for years to come. But when you look at all of our largest export markets after the United States, the places where we want to sell more things now, all of these countries still have industrial carbon pricing, a net zero target. Half of them are looking at or have carbon border adjustment mechanisms. They're regulating the amount of electric vehicles in their market. The question is simply, is it a safe bet to be betting on something the world is going to want less of? Fourth, big challenge, getting big things done in government. And this isn't a slander. I've spent a lot of my career in government and public service, but it's a challenge already raised here this evening. The kinds of industrial policy we want our government to be de-risking capital, attracting investment, figuring out new trade partners. But at the same time, they have been in the business and should not get out of it of protecting environmental rights, Indigenous rights, thinking through labor standards. And I think it's going to be a tension that we will see rise to the surface over the next few years, and really important, as Chris already mentioned, to try to get that right, and a big challenge. So, can we still win with the end of the night? And I'm going to leave you on a note of optimism here. So Winston Churchill famously said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." I would say that's a crude but useful assessment of human nature, because we are biologically preconditioned to prefer the status quo, even if it isn't better. And so, maybe 2021 we were battling our own challenges, but I think today the economic instability, the geopolitical instability, people are feeling threatened. And so maybe there's an openness to change, because we're seeing some of these technologies actually solve some of the problems and the real problems that people are experiencing today. Maybe the opportunity to open up to some change is maybe even greater than it was in 2021. And for the sake of that same Disney preteen, I'm sure hoping that's the case.